Hi guys, it's Tuesday the 18th of October. Welcome back to the Squashcast. I'm your host Rob, joined once again by Jesse Engelbrecht.
How's it, Rob? Good to see you again. It's been a while that we've recorded, so apologies to everyone out there. Start of the season manicness at the club here, Surrey Sports Park, just getting everything sorted with the university and the team, so hands up, my fault, apologies. Rob's been on my back to try and get it sorted, but here we go, so let's delve straight in.
Yeah, you can't take all the blame. I did just finish my PhD thesis, so I'm pretty pleased with that, but we're back on the Squashcast and we're ready to start talking about what's been going on. And we're going to start straight away with the big tournament that we've been talking about all summer, which is the Ahram Squash Open in New Giza. And it was a great event. It's the first time it's been back at the Pyramids for 10 years, and it's something you said yourself you were looking forward to.
Totally, really good to see it back. Iconic backdrop. I believe there was a few little issues building up to it. I had a bit of inside knowledge from a few players that, just all that it was meant to be wasn't quite working. And that was a pity, but, I think what we saw at the end was fantastic. The way they put it on, everything was absolutely brilliant and it looked a spectacle. But behind the scenes, there was maybe a few issues, but let's hopefully that they'll be ironed out for ones in the future.
Yeah, we saw a few troubles on PSA Squash TV, which has been a bit fewer than in previous years, so pretty pleased to see that the tournament went ahead without too many major hiccups. And we'll talk about the men's draw first, and the tournament champion was Kareem Abdel-Gawad, one of the home favourites, obviously not the favourite. I would have thought that would go to Mohamed El-Shorbagy, and he played Ali Farag in the final, which I don't think anyone really predicted at the beginning of the tournament.
Totally, Mohamed El-Shorbagy 1 seed, Omar Mossad 2 seed. I think most of us would have not liked to see, but expected to see Mohamed in the final. I believe there's quite an expectation for him to perform in Egypt. I think the pressure got to him a little bit. He's, I'm not sure how popular he is there because he's been living over in the UK for so long now. So I think there was a lot on him, and he just looked tense. He looked edgy. It didn't quite look like what he can be doing. And lost to Ali Farag in the semi-finals, a pretty big match, 14-12 in the fourth. But all credit to Ali Farag, had a bit of a breakthrough there. And then on the other side of the draw with Kareem Gawad, coming through Mossad 3-love, really impressive. I think the way he's looking after the summer, wow, he's really, really looking strong. He's lost a lot of weight. As you probably heard from the commentators, he's really fit at the moment. I managed to speak to a couple of players that were out there and saw him play. They just said, he's looking the real deal at the moment. And then for him to go on and win the final relatively convincingly, 40 minutes 3-love against Ali Farag, all credit to him in front of that iconic backdrop. So, I think watch the space for Gawad. It'll be interesting to see when we do our podcast on reviewing some of our predictions at the end of the summer and looking at these now. It could be quite interesting because I think a lot of it will be blown out the water, if I'm honest. But it's been great for the game. This first tournament and the next couple we're going to talk about, there's been some great upsets.
Yeah, so in talking about upsets, we saw Ali Farag take out Ramy Ashour. Well, Ramy did have to retire, so it's a calf strain, I believe, which is a shame. Second round of a big home tournament. He's going to be one of the favourites again, so that's another shame.
Yeah, it's just a pity. I think we did have this discussion in a previous Squashcast. Ramy, he can just do so well, but then as soon as he's injured, he can just disappear for so long, which is expected. But I think everyone's just wishing that he can kind of sustain himself and his body. I think I saw he's in Germany, I think, at the moment, kind of getting his rehab done, and I saw some pictures of him, kind of tweeting about all his rehab and the work he's doing. So good luck to him getting back. But, Ali Farag, a very popular player on the tour, had that breakthrough at the end of last season and is continuing to look the real deal at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. Ali Farag, one really to look forward to in the future. And he even beat Mohamed El-Shorbagy in the semi-finals 3-1, which is a pretty big scalp to take. I thought my favourite match personally was Shorbagy versus Rosner early on. It was just a big, strong, hard-hitting game. Quite a lot of exciting stuff going on, but that's really to be expected with those two. So we move on to the women's draw, and the champion was Raneem El-Walili. She played Noor El-Sherbini, so an all-Egyptian final. That's going to be in many people's predictions for that final, which is not too much of a surprise for me, and it was a really exciting fixture.
Yeah, you look at Nicole David as the number 2 seed, weirdly got taken out by Sarah Jane Perry. You would have thought that it would have been an Egyptian that would have taken Nicole David out maybe at the semis or on the final. But yeah, that's a great breakthrough for the young English girl, Sarah Jane. 11-9 in the fifth, a 61-minute match. Unfortunately, Sarah couldn't really follow it up in the semis, losing 3-love to Reneem. But, Reneem, the 3 seed, bursting through, going on to win the final, taking out Noor El Shabini 3-2, a 61-minute best 5-setter match, 11-7 in the fifth. Also, what I found quite interesting was the wild card, Noor El Tayeb, in the first round beating Norhan Gohar in a 5-setter. I tipped Norhan Gohar to do some big things this season, so that was quite interesting to see how she fell at the first hurdle. And then Noor El Tayeb then beating Alison Waters in a 5-setter, 82-minute 5-setter in the quarterfinals. It just looked like she had nothing then left in the tank against Noor El Shabini, and you probably need all of your game plus more at that stage if you're the wild card. So really impressive to see how she's burst through, and watch the space for her now.
Yeah, she looked really comfortable at home, and taking out Norhan Gohar after her performance in Hong Kong was particularly impressive. So we're going to move on to the NetSuite Open, hosted in San Francisco, and this tournament saw one of this season's probably biggest surprises, which is the resurgence of James Willstrop.
Brilliant to see. He's been plagued by injuries of late, put in some massive shifts, and the wild card, getting all the way through to the final. For those of you who saw it, absolutely brilliant. He was in the bottom half. Took out Miguel Rodriguez first round, who was the 3 seed. Just on that point as well, it's been really interesting to see the fall of Miguel of late. I know that sounds a bit harsh, but I think, a lot of people maybe worked him out, or maybe he hasn't put in a big of a summer as he could have and trained. But first 3 tournaments, I think he's won 1 match, I believe. Maybe I think he got through 1 round of one of the tournaments and lost both of the others in the first round. But more onto James, beating Miguel first round and then beating Simon Rosner, the 6th seed in the quarters. Massive match, 12-10 in the fifth, which was brilliant. Both well over 6-foot players, going hammer and tongs. James with a feather touch drop shots, and Simon Rosner with a big tree chopper technique. And then, really interestingly, you look at that draw in the bottom half. James then played Diego Elias in the semi-finals, the young Peruvian, who, again, I've tipped to make a bit of a breakthrough. I think it was into the top 16, if not the top 12 this season coming up. He took out Ali Farag in the first round, Diego did. And it is really interesting to see. I think Ali Farag is one of the only players that played in Ahram and then went across to San Francisco. Usually players would choose one or the other. So I think he showed his inexperience there to try kind of do both back to back. A lot of the Egyptians obviously played over there in Ahram, and then the rest and the Europeans played in San Francisco. But credit to Diego to then back it up by beating Gregoire Marsh in the semis. Again, really interestingly, talking a lot about the bottom half here, the whole tournament was really torn apart. Gregoire Marsh, the qualifier, took out Nick Matthew, the number 2 seed in the first round. Nick, that's his first tournament for a long time, a long layoff. So, surprised he'd lose to someone like Gregoire, but, very short of match play, a very short of tournament play. But, as we've seen in the latest tournament, Nick looks like he's back on song. But, Nick took a bit of time to get up and running there.
Yeah, I think Nick was probably hoping that the time off that he took not playing in Hong Kong and then not playing in Ahram, he'd probably hope he would have done a bit better in this one. But as you say, with the US Open recently finished, he came back strong on form. And Gregoire Marsh took him out 3-love, and it almost seemed like Marsh was just up and running with the season just that little bit quicker. And then another big upset, as you said, Diego Elias taking out Gregoire Marsh in the next round. And, you said it in our top tips of the season that Elias would shoot up the rankings. I'm really looking forward to see if he does. And if we talk about sort of my favourite match of the season, of the tournament, was Willstrop Rosner. As you said, these 2 giants of the game, physically and in terms of squash in general. This match was a pretty exciting 3-2 battle.
Yeah, listen, we've got to remember Greg Gultier still won the tournament. I don't think we've even mentioned that yet. So we're rattling on about all these other amazing players and that. But it was such a topsy-turvy tournament. And I think both Rob and I did predict at the start of the season, these first couple of tournaments, Hong Kong kicking us off, Ahram, NetSuite, that we would see quite a few upsets. And I think it's showing, lots of strange results left, right and center. But, someone like Greg to go and win it, that's getting back to normality now. The number 1 seed, taking out Marwan Al-Shabagi in the semis 3-love pretty convincingly, and then Greg beating James 3-love in the final. I think there were some comments when Greg's in that type of form, he just looks imperious, the general strutting around. So yeah, good to see him winning that tournament early in the season. It'll be interesting on the road to Dubai where he kind of fares with it all.
Yeah, I think with Greg in that final, he seemed so comfortable walking on court against James, who's played him hundreds of times and has come out the victor more times than not. I think he struggled in earlier tournaments, and the pair of us said that we really expected Shabagi and Gaultier and Matthew to come on strong early in the season, and it really hasn't materialised that way. We've had a number of different champions with Gawad and Ahram and Hong Kong as well. These top players aren't really performing as strongly as we had expected. So if we move on to the women's tournament, we had Laura Mazzaro, the English player, taking the win against Amanda Sobry 3-1 in that final, and it was probably the most exciting game of the whole tournament, in my opinion. Amanda, the home favourite, not quite coming out on top there.
Yeah, look, Amanda performing again well on her home soil, really bursting through. She had to take out Nicole David in the semi-finals. She managed to do it 3-1. You could say relatively comfortable, but yeah, again, it's just Nicole David, the number 2 seed, the number 3 seed. She keeps just falling at the quarters and the semis. So really interesting to see how she's going to pick herself back up. I think I saw a Twitter/Facebook thing about her, talking about she's still as hungry as ever and she's still doing the right things and training as hard as ever. So, let's see if she can burst through again. But, look at Laura, you'd probably say relatively comfortable tournament, 3-love first round, 3-love second round, 3-love in the semis, and then only dropping a game in the final to Amanda, 47-minute win there for Laura. So, picking up quite quickly where she left off at the end of last season on the Super Series finals, and yeah, really staking her claim up there. She's older than a lot of the other girls on tour now, so it'll be interesting to see how she can really stake her claim with the young Egyptians and other players coming through.
Yeah, and I think it was a great opportunity for her to get some experience in before the big next tournament coming up, the US Open. And now we move on to the Delaware Investments US Open, held in Philadelphia. One of my favourite tournaments here, held at Drexel University. This one, I believe, the finals are played in a church. Is that right?
You could well be right there, Rob. I like how many favorite tournaments you're starting to rack up here, so I'll pick you up on that one. So, but no, great tournament, great city. I've been there a few times myself. I spent a summer there training with Gilly Lane, of all people, the MC. So I lived at his house, and we were quite good mates in that. So no, good to see him doing his thing on PSA TV, and it just looks like such a spectacle. They know how to do things out there. All the small things tend to get taken care of. So yeah, again, great tournament to watch. Some interesting results. Early upsets in the first round with James Willstrop take out Mossad. James again showing the form that he had in the previous tournament, bringing it straight over to the US Open. So I think when I was speaking to a few people around the club, when it looked at one point that Nick and James could have made the final. They're both in opposite halves of the semis, and it just would have been great to roll back those years and see them battling it out. You could almost roll it back 10 years at that point. So, but both, massive credit to them, both getting to the semi-finals.
Yeah, and James's sort of performance recently has really surprised a lot of people. I think as you said, Nick was in the opposite side of the draw. He had a slightly tougher run, I believe, he had to take out Ali Farag, and I was talking to another member, in fact, about that match, and we were discussing whether or not we thought Nick would be strong enough to go through that one, and I was of the opinion that he just had a bit more physicality for that kind of game and would eventually push past him.
I don't know if anyone followed Nick's Twitter line during the US Open. It was really good to see just the passion he still has for the game. He's still almost talking like he's a 19-year-old, like his first experience of a big tournament. He just loves every bit of it, and just some of the photos when he was winning, just that the wolf was back. And I know his coach Neil Gowrie was putting up some interesting things on Twitter, like putting up a picture of Leo DiCaprio and the Wolf of Wall Street, showing that smug expression and comparing him to Nick. So it was really good to kind of see the buzz around Nick and him getting back to where it was. And I think he just was a bit short in that final. He just had that slightly tougher route. Shebagi probably hitting the form that we came to see of him at the end of last season. So it was just a shame that Nick really couldn't get stuck into that final.
Yeah, and I think when Nick took the first two games, they were really close. But as soon as you see him lose the third 11-1, you got to realise something's wrong, and eventually retiring in the fifth and making Shebagi the champion.
Yeah, I know. Pity to see that, but he put in a massive shift there. What I found interesting was the Gultier Garwad match. In the quarterfinals, I think quite a few people probably expected Garwad to maybe go and win this, if not get to the final, if he wasn't in Greg's half. So it was really interesting to see that then he took Greg out unexpectedly in the quarters. And then I think most people were probably thinking, if he's taken Greg out, Nick is probably next on his list. So, and then again, it was almost an upset for Nick to then beat Garwad in the semi-finals. Just want to give a little shout out as well to my fellow South African compatriot Steve Coppinger, doing really well, getting through to the semi-finals, two massive five-setters, to the quarterfinals, two massive five-setters on the way there, and I think one of them was 13-11 in the fifth and the other was 11-9, so massive credit to the big South African. Hopefully he looks back on form and bursts back into that top 20 and maybe get a top 10 spot by the end of the season.
Yeah, great performance from Steve. You talked about Goward making the semi-final against Nick, and if we look at the scores in that match, it sort of switches between them, and that massive third game which Nick took 16-14 really took it out of Nick, and losing the fourth game 11-3. Fortunately he was able to come back and take the fifth 12-10. I mean, that's a titanic game for any kind of player, and it's not a real surprise that he then unfortunately had to retire from the final.
Yeah, and if you just look across at the other semi-final with Shebagi taking James out, 11-7, 11-5, 13-11, you'd class that as relatively comfortable, so Mohammed was on the front foot, Nick, probably just about holding on at that point. So hopefully Nick and Mohammed get to meet each other, in a final, or if not even before that at some point, where they're both relatively fresh and relatively on the same terms.
So if we move over to the women's draw, we had probably one of the most exciting tournaments of the whole season so far. A totally unpredictable result of Camille Serm. I think she was 6th seed, taking the final trophy against Nour El Shabini, and she won it 3-1. It was a close game, but she looked so confident throughout. She'd beaten Laura Mazzaro 3-2 in the quarters, and it was a great performance.
Yeah, very unexpected one, that to have Camille Serm come all the way through and get that win. The number 6 seed, beating Laura Massaro, who's come off some really good form in the previous tournament. And yeah, just nice to see her passion and her drive. Again, looking at Amanda Sobey reaching the semi-finals on home soil, she did really well, and I would have probably backed her in that semi-final at that point. She tends to really up her game in front of her home crowd, coming off some good form from San Francisco as well. So yeah, a really topsy-turvy tournament. You can almost look back one step as well at Amanda Sobey beating Gohar in the quarterfinals, Norhan Gohar, 3-1. So I think we maybe mentioned it, Noah Gohan has got that amazing power, probably more power than any of the girls out there. And at the end of last season, I was predicting big things for her, and she just looks like she might have been worked out a little bit here. And some of the ladies are able to combat that outright brute force and power, because she's lost a few early rounds. I know quarters is not early round, but you look back at the other tournaments, she lost relatively early round match there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Noran can get on with, developing her game to a point where it's not too one-dimensional, and that she's able to take these tournaments like she has earlier in the season in Hong Kong. The other semi-final of Shabini versus El Walili I think that's going to be a very common game in the semi-finals. If either one of them is seeded 1 or 3, that's going to be a very common semi-final. They seem to be destined to fight it out against each other.
Yeah, I know. Probably whenever they see the draws being published, I bet they're rolling their eyes every time they see each other in the same half of the draw. So it would have been interesting to see if they were in separate halves, if Al Walili would have taken out, Serm or Sobey a bit earlier on. But yeah, again, Serm winning it probably settles that argument, 11-9 in the fourth. And yeah, just great to see someone different than an Egyptian name on the title, which is great.
Yeah, massive congratulations to Camille. I think that probably brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thank you for listening. We will do our best to be a bit more regular with the tournaments. we've got the World Champs coming up at the end of the month, starting on October 27th to November 4th. That one's held in Cairo, with pretty much all of the top names going to be at that tournament.
Yeah, the World Champs, biggest one of the season, arguably, and yeah, just looking at the draws now, the top seeds, they're all in there. They're all looking really strong. We'll watch that closely and comment and give our 2 cents on it, which will be interesting. Just finally, to wrap up this squash cast, just want to have a bit of a shout out to Sumner Malik. Some of you might have been following him on Twitter and Facebook. He's the young son of Cameron Malik, who has been diagnosed with a really bad brain tumor. And I'm not sure if any of you saw recently the video Lee Beachell put out from the PSA, which was fantastic. It just gave me goosebumps and put a tear in my eye, where they've invited him and his whole family out to the World Championships, to the semis and finals, all expenses paid. And just a really nice cause. So yeah, if anyone's out there and wants to show some support, I think what's the tagline or the hashtag is Sunshine for Sumner. Everyone's talking about that and donating, and he's got a Just Giving page, I believe. So if you can, log online, kind of Google that, Sunshine for Sumner, show some support, put some money in if you can. Shame it's such a tragic disease, and I've had the luxury of coaching the kids, the whole family I've been involved with. So for me, it's quite a personal thing. So yeah, all the best to him and his family. We'll all be thinking closely of him.
Yeah, absolutely. All the best to the Maliks, and all the that they're having to go through right now is really tragic, and I'm really pleased that all the big names in squash have caught on to this. Rami's posting every other day, and that massive thanks to Lee Beachell and PSA for putting on such an amazing gift for them for that trip for the World Championships. So that'll do us for this week. Don't forget, you can follow us on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, all the usual places. We will be back for the Men's World Championships at the beginning of November. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.